Well, unless you
I
want
have
me to-
one. Oh, if you want to do it, go ahead.
Oh, if you're gonna do it, go ahead.
Okay.
I was just,
So I'm gonna do a 6B, under old business, cause it's kinda old, cause the governor's old. So there was a November 14th, he's an old person, who's a new governor.
I'm good with that, whatever.
November 14th letter from the governor, so I thought we could take 5 or 10 minutes and just look at that real quick, cause that could affect all of us. And if there's nothing other than that, I have no correspondence, correct, Bill? You have nothing?
No.
Approve the minutes of the October 25th Executive Committee meeting. So could I get a motion in a second?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay.
Say your name.
Carolyn Partridge.
Carolyn Partridge seconded,
Ken
and
McFadden.
Ken. So I had one quick correction, Al. I don't think you were at that meeting.
Not there, no, I'm staying.
So I'm sorry, that was my fault, because I wrote him, because I expected him to be here, so.
You should have.
It wasn't your fault.
He was in a celebration.
Yes, that was.
Yes, but anyway,
Soccer
so,
mode.
will you make that one correction, sir?
What is the correction?
That Al Clausen wasn't here.
Okay.
And I will take full responsibility, because I did write his name on the piece of paper I gave you.
It is done.
Hey, Joe, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Joe Winrick, late from,
Living a great town.
I'm from Leland, I'm on the Leland and Gray Board and I'm from Townsend.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second with one correction. If there's no other conversation, discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we're so far ahead of time now.
Good.
New business, superintendent's budget, action. So let's do this. I'm gonna hold that and skip over that. And I'm gonna go to the special ed budget, so that if we do get a quorum of the super board can vote. And if not, I will read to you folks the abilities of the supervisory union executive committee and see if you feel that it is appropriate and that we can vote the budget.
Before you move on, can I ask
Yep,
about that?
the superintendent's budget?
Yeah, about the
Okay.
action.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, this is our November 15th meeting, and we have, 29th and the 6th, and we generally try to have an opportunity for people to see the budget and then come back and I know we've already looked at it once, but I'm thinking not us, I'm thinking more community. And if we vote on it tonight, if we have an action tonight, that is voting on our, I guess I'm asking, is action meaning voting on our final budget?
I would like to be able to vote on the final budget tonight.
Okay.
Because we have
That's
those
where
other
we're at.
meetings in case there was a lot of issues. The budget's been out for over 2 weeks. It's been to all the local boards. And I don't know, has any local board, we're pretty well represented by boards. We're only
We are.
missing Jamaica and well, Stratton doesn't usually come. There's nobody else missing?
Brookline's missing, but they're supposed to be here.
Okay.
At least one
So
representative.
has any board had any
But they don't have their own
questions
budget.
or issues with the superintendent budget?
Right.
So let's come back to that then, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
curious about whether that was actual or not, action.
Special education budget. So I guess you gotta have a name, you gotta be Lori to work in the business office, huh? Stephanie's special ed, but Lori's gonna present it, I think, to start. Right, you're gonna start off with the special ed budget, and then
Sure.
Stephanie's gonna speak to.
Jump in when, yes,
Okay.
sounds
So
good.
we'll turn the meeting over to you, ma'am.
Okay, so, in your second section of the budget, you have 4 sections actually, sorry. You'll see, the special ed, basically the summary sheet, it looks like this. Make sure everybody's got that, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the budget. Now, as you remember from last year, the special ed revenues are all coming through the supervisory union now. So that's what this budget is representing. And what is in your budgets is the net amount of special ed that you owe. So basically, after reimbursements, the 44%, plus some local match of your block grant, that's what you'll owe. So if you look at the top, I apologize it's so small, but there's a lot of detail on here. So if you look at the top grid right here, this is all the revenues. And then the next grid down is the school's net amount. And then if you look below that, the long grid right here is representing the gross. So let's just take one for instance. We'll take Jamaica. So their gross costs are $276,347, an increase of $22,000 over last year. So that nets out after reimbursement is figured in to $122,594. Does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody following me there? Okay. So the overall budget is up $720,000 from last year. And that's all the districts. And, you know, if you read through the narrative, I don't know if everybody had a chance to read through that, but I think it explains most of the increases there, or it explains all the increases actually, so. I don't know if you wanna take a minute to read through those? Get a sense
Well,
for
did
it.
everybody get a chance to look at this, or, Lori put rulers on the tables, but people stole them last year, so she has less.
So make sure you give them back.
So the rulers really help follow the line items, so there's extra rulers here. And does anybody wanna just why don't we take 2 or 3 minutes, everybody just can look through this, and then if we have any questions, let's look at the numbers, and then, if you don't mind, we'll let Stephanie talk about
Sure.
the written report, cause I think you wrote that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, why don't we do that, Lori, if that's okay?
It is, but before you start diving in to look at it though, I just wanna refer you to page 2 on this. And this is where the gross costs are broken out by category basically of SLP, PT, OT, and all the way down the line. So that just gives you an idea of what's being spent on what, so.
Lori, these are the same numbers that you projected in with the budgets you've already given to schools, right?
The net cost, yes.
Okay. Lori, I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Do we have the mix of special ed students versus other students for this budget versus previous years?
So you're talking about the percentage of special ed in relation to ADM?
Correct.
20% this year, which is up from between 17 and 18 last year. And you can also see that reflected in the number of, that we counted for service plan is 202 students versus I think it was 174 last year. So though, you know, again, this is what we're planning for in fiscal year 19, based on what we know today. It could change. It has changed
It will
already.
change.
Stephanie keeps calling me and saying, I said, the budget's set. We have to
But
call
I
it.
think we all understand that, you know, you do the best you can, we're planning a year and a half out. If any of us here could predict what was gonna happen a year and a half out, none of us would be here, we'd all be playing the futures market. And like I always say at town meeting, I'd be on some tropical island with my harem and enjoying my life.
And this is what we do every year.
Right.
This is not anything different.
Yeah, and you know what, we always get to true up the following year, and the true up comes back in with, as a surplus or a deficit. And I think, you know, we've all tried to do our best, you know, I don't think we just say, hey, there's extra money, let's spend it.
Right.
You know, so it's, you know, it's a really, I give everybody credit who tries to guess ahead of time, you know.
Does anybody else have any questions about specific items or?
Has everybody got to review the numbers? Are they okay with numbers?
I have a quick question, Lauren. Sure. Just on the second page, when you have it broken down into category, this might be a silly question, but under Marlboro's, we don't have any 7 through 12 instructional expenses, but we have a 7th and 8th grade.
You
Is
do,
that-
yeah. We've never actually broken out the 7th and 8th grade.
So we've just lumped it in the K6?
It is. It's-
Okay.
Yeah, so you have a 1.0 special educator at the school.
Right. Okay.
So, good question though.
I didn't know if that was like obvious.
Yeah. Yep, it is. Good question.
Is there any other budget number questions, or should we move into the written report, Melissa? Okay, Lori, thank you. Why don't you go ahead, and if you wanna just, so we've got something in writing, I don't think you have to read it to us, but just give you any highlights or.
Sure, yep. I think there were some items we couldn't help at all. Some of those include the health insurance costs, which I'm sure you guys are all well aware of. And then master agreement raise for salaries. Kind of could help some, I guess, but you have to compete with our neighbors, right? And then the transportation increase. We mentioned this at a previous meeting where all of our drivers who were just contracted as like a lump sum of what they got as a daily rate had to become employees. Fortunately, we don't have any who are at a point where we have to offer health care, but if they got to that point, they would be treated just like other employees. So those I kind of listed as like can't help. The staff increases are partially because of forward thinking, according to our continuous improvement plan and trying to build up our multi-tiered system of supports in our district, with the hope that that will prevent future increases in special ed referrals. So you'll see the first bullet is an increase based for a special educator because of the number of students we had this year. So that's a 0.67. We had almost the bottom area, certified occupational therapy assistant was hired to assist with the number of occupational therapy services that were needed for students in their IEPs, and that is to help our occupational therapists. The out-of-district placements definitely increased, and that's another reason why we're trying to put more effort into multi-tiered systems of support. We have a lot of students who end up having to pop out into outside placements, so we're working on building up our capacity to prevent that from happening. And then the cost shift for the school psychologist, that was an interesting change. We're trying as a district to prioritize EEE and early childhood education. We know scientifically that's the first 5 years are crucial for development. So we're trying to put our resources there. However, we know it's not reimbursable for schools. So we're trying really hard to think creatively so that we can maximize what, yeah. So you get it, right? I got the thumbs up over there.
No, I
Do you-
just finally found the paper.
I found okay. So we have moved our school psychologist from the grant because she can be funded, partially reimbursed through the reimbursements for Medicaid, and EEE cannot. So we put more of our EEE costs in the grant instead. And then the lower part is all about EEE, Essential Early Education. Sorry for the acronym. And one was the cost shift from the school psychologist, and then the EEE coordinator was pretty overloaded, and we have a lot of students, and our numbers are growing in that area, so we had to hire an early childhood special ed instructional interventionist to help with those services. And then we have a couple of situations where students need more intensive services in the EEE area than some of our other students, so they are in out-of-district placements with the hope that they will be able to return in district as soon as possible, but we have to build up capacity. So that's the kind of the highlights and reasons why there were changes.
So for the Stephanie's report, is there any questions on that? So special ed, are we okay with that? Can we move on to the next budget group?
Are we looking at different ways for the transportation
Yes.
expense, right?
Very much.
As soon as I get by audit, that's my next focus, because we really need to figure out something, whether we're going to lease vehicles or You know, we're trying to be creative about it and save money along the way, but at the very least, we need to make sure that the district is not at risk. That is the biggest concern right now for me, and I know for Bill as well.
Yes.
So,
And we did try to save some money this year, but we're not allowed to extend or shorten a student's day just to have the convenience of them riding on the same, same van or same car together. So we've been kind of dealing back and forth with what's the window of opportunity there. We are, I am working with other districts as well as our outside placements to see if we can change the window of pickup and drop off. So if they could accept a student 15 minutes earlier and another one could start 15 minutes later, it might work out where they could ride together. So I'm trying to think outside the box that still allows us to be within compliance, so.
I do want to point out one thing as well, as Stephanie was talking through this, is some of these things are happening now, right? I want to make sure everybody understands that we had to hire the CODA, we had to hire the .67 this year. Now it's in the plan for next year, it's unplanned for this year. So that may have an effect on the bottom line as well. For
Well, we won't see
for
that.
fiscal year 18.
Right, we won't see that till.
No, you won't see it till the end, till we've
And
reconciled everything.
also, the more we spend, the more supposed reimbursement we get too, so it's not a one-to-one. For every dollar we expend doesn't mean it's actually a dollar to us.
Right. I also just want to touch on the Triple E quickly, is that you're not getting an assessment for the Triple E coordinator or the related service piece of it. So if you do have something, a line item in your budget that refers to Triple E, it is for the outside placement services, not for the coordinator or the interventionist or the related services. So that we were able to grant fund all of that and keep your assessment at 0. So not everybody has something in their budget for Triple E.
When does that grant sunset? Oh, sorry. When does that grant sunset?
So it's a 7/1 to 6/30 grant every year. The
Oh.
IDEA grant, our federal money, is what we're using.
Okay.
Al?
So I know we're back to Rich's crystal ball here, but if you look at FY17 unaudited versus our proposed budget, it's a 44% increase over that 2-year span. Do we project this to continue in the future at 15-20% clip? Or have some of the measures you've taken maybe stem the tide on that a little bit?
Well, I think we can both answer that. I think that we're starting to put things in place now to mitigate those increases.
I can tell you, one of the things we're working on is building up the capacity of our paras, and that's aligned with the district management group report we had, and trying to find creative ways where it doesn't have to be a very expensive provider providing services, or maybe there's a room where kids go when they're having a hard time, and there might be social emotional support or behavioral support or whatever kinds of remediation they need. So we're trying to build up capacity in that way. Without a lot of money, because we didn't put PD in for our paras, but we have found we're working with local districts, the Brattleboro Retreat, and other agencies to provide training that's free, and then we just have to pay our paras to go. So we're doing those kinds of things, and I'm hopeful that by the fall of 2020 we'll be able to launch a couple of different programs, and I'm working with principals now to kind of see how that would impact their schools. Do we need small programs that just work on difficulties students in that school have, or do we want to do district-wide? Do we want to do regional? So I'm trying to reach across the aisle basically and try to find ways to support.
And to follow up on that, that is another reason why we decided to do the cost shift of the psychologist, because we're building a little bit of room in the grant for this launch, which is a perfect use of grant money, is when you're doing a new program, and we'll be able to use that money without it affecting the local budgets as much.
So there's a piece of paper in your packet. It says proposed Wyndham Central SU budgets, and it's got the superintendent special agency grant in total. Because it shows on this, the special ed budget is only up 17.07%, not 20, or, what did you say?
Well, I
Oh, I'm
think
sorry, I was
Alan
going from 17 to 19. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
He's making.
yeah, okay,
he's
I'm sorry.
calculating the jump.
Okay. Well, I'm saying I didn't see that, yeah.
I
But
made it.
that's a good cheat sheet.
You did your own math.
I did. Yeah. Everybody
I
good?
didn't check you, but I
with-
trusted you.
Yeah,
Is this an appropriate time to bring up mine?
go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's worth having the conversation again. I know we've had the conversation in the past, about sharing special ed costs across the entirety of the SU to kind of level fund, so that way every school is paying and, it's all shared equally amongst the schools. I know that we're all, with the exception of Marlboro, and Wyndham building, starting to build budgets, building their final budget as an individual school, starting next year, it's gonna be Dover, Wordsboro, gonna be building one budget, the Leland and Gray schools will be building one budget, is it time to think about that conversation again about sharing special ed costs broadly? If we're gonna be committing to educating all of our students within the SU equally, does it make sense to cost share it equally? I don't know if it's worth tonight having that conversation, since there's not a whole lot of us here, but just, it's on my mind.
It was also in your plan, in your guys' plan.
And it is in our, yeah. It is in our
State
plan,
board.
yeah, yeah. That's one of the
So,
things we
just some
wanted to work on.
background, a long time ago, Wyndham, the state of Vermont passed a law that said transportation and,
It's 153.
yeah, you can
It was
remember
in
acts, I can't.
2010.
It was another one of those, let's,
It was in
but the-
2010, it was Act 153.
anyways,
And it's,
all expenses for special ed have to go through central office. So we used to all hire our own special educators and whatever, and now they all go through central office. So we do meet the intent of the law. All special education does run through central office. What we decided was, because different schools were doing different preventative actions, that we would bill based on the usage in the building. And so if a school used a lot of special education expenses, they would pay a lot instead of just doing it across the board by ADM. And that was back before these folks were here. I mean, Lori worked for Frank, but it was a Frank Rucker, Stephen John, and Abby Dillon. And it was Abby and Frank that brought it to Stephen. So that's how we've been voting on that. It does affect smaller schools, because in Wyndham, if their special education budget goes from 0 to 100,000, and there's 20 students, and everybody will know who that student is, it kind of makes it tough. And Marlboro's had the same issue a few times, where if you have like 500 or 700 students, it's harder to kind of.
which none of us have.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have all together, but you guys will be close, won't you, in the West River when you're formed?
572.
Yes.
Thank you for the number, I didn't know it, but.
So, so Marlboro asked a few years ago, but because we were doing the Act 46 stuff, we kind of put that on the back burner. So, is there a way for you to tell us how much numbers change if we just did it based on ADM versus the way we've been doing it? Can you,
Get that information for you.
can you get that?
This minute, or you?
Well, I don't know how hard it is for you to get. I don't know if you
Yes,
have,
Joe.
huh?
I can absolutely get you that information. That's,
Okay, sometimes you have that already, so that's why I didn't know.
I don't, because we've been doing it this way
Right,
for so
okay.
long, but I can certainly get it.
Okay.
Maybe by the end of the meeting,
Do
we
you-
can come
just-
round
just
about
off-
that, but.
Just off the top of your head, do you have any rough idea? Does it change it a
Well-
lot or not?
It changes it some, yeah, because, so, if you look at page 1,
Yep,
and you look at the, this long grid again, here,
yep,
you'll see that our total, fiscal year 19 proposed expenses are 4.9 million, right? Everybody can identify that? So if you scroll over a little bit to the percent of special ed, okay, that's how I have to figure out the block grant. So that's the percent of special ed that each entity is using, basically, or spending. Okay, so that would be comparable to, or I can do the comparison to ADM, but that just, that gives you a good guideline of, right now, Jamaica's, 5.6% of the total cost, and Marlboro's 17.79. What's the difference in students? How many students does that reflect and that type of thing? But I can do that information, I can get that information for you.
And I think that's really valuable to have that information, but I also recognize that 1 year it's one thing, 1 year it's another. If we're looking at a snapshot, we're looking at a snapshot. We need to make sure we understand what that means. I mean, it might really benefit one school district 1 year, and it might not benefit them in another year. In the big scheme of things, the idea is to, smooth all that out and everything comes to an average. But I think, without looking at long-term impacts, it's hard to know.
Well, I think also to really look at it, we have to look going forward
Yes.
when the entities are formed. How does that affect, when we have the new entities?
Can I ask? This may not be a question that you would have an answer to, but does it make sense as we're forming these new districts and we're all going to be operational, those who are merging are going to be operational on July 1st, 2019, does it make sense to do this now, or does it make sense to do it later, regardless of what our driving force is behind it or whether we make the decision? I'm just talking about it as is it smart to make that kind of a change prior to the actual mergers, which the next budget will be, literally the next budget cycle will be merged, so.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it would be wait until we've done the merger and look at the two scenarios of, here it is by student, which is what this reflects. This reflects IEPs, and then look at it based on ADM.
I got your answer.
You got it already?
Yeah.
Nice job.
Okay, so Dover,
That's why I kept asking questions.
Dover is at 4.57 if we go by special ed. If we were to go by ADM, it would be 11%, so Dover's number would over more than double. Jamaica would go from 5.59 to 7%. So they go up just a little bit. The next one down is Marlboro. They're at 17.79. They would go down about 10% based on, and I'm taking those out of your
The ADM
superintendent's
out of the-
budget.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
And then Newbrook
Keep doing it.
is at 16.62%. They would go to 19%, so they would go up a little bit. Stratton would go from 1.87 to 2%, so they'd go up just a hair. Townsend would go from 11.52 to 10. Wardsboro would go from 7 to 5. Wyndham would go from 1 to 3, so you would triple.
Yeah.
And Leland and Gray is right about the same exact, 33.99, and they're at 34.
Bigger numbers.
So the big winner would be Marlboro, and the big loser would be Dover.
And
Wyndham.
And
Wyndham.
Wyndham, well, yeah, and
I mean,
also
I understand,
Newbrook.
but for them,
Newbrook is,
It's an impact.
it's 3% on 16, so that's not too big an increase. So anyways, that's rough numbers for people.
It's an
This-
increase, it's an increase.
That's this year.
Right now.
Right.
I mean, we could have looked at this last year or the year before, and it might have been something totally different.
It would have been, it was really close. I've looked at it before, and it's always
But
been,
Marlboro has fluctuated
One big
pretty,
increase.
quite a bit in their special ed.
Yeah.
I think this is a valuable discussion to have, but I think it should be a very informed discussion. When we talk about socializing special ed costs, that's kind of an outcome of what has happened in core instruction, what has happened in intervention, what has happened in creating the environment, what has happened in, have we made decisions to have multi-age classes, individual classes, what does the research say that can minimize, have we looked at what the DMG report has said, have we put those things into place? So there's a lot more involved than just saying these are the end costs and we're going to share them. So I'm extremely happy to have this conversation, but it's got to be a much bigger conversation than just the outcome of money and the spread. It's how do we do business? Are we making decisions based on what research says gives us the best opportunity to minimize those kinds of costs? And if we aren't doing those things, are we going to impose those things? Are we going to, what body is going to enforce those kinds of decisions. So I think it's a great conversation to have, but it is a much, much bigger conversation than just socializing the end cost.
No, I agree, and actually, that's a big reason why I wanted to bring it up, is because we are, you know, we're not there yet, but we are slowly making those shifts towards, you know, having more of you know, working with Jen, working with Stephanie. You know, we've got new folks here who are trying to create a more uniform system throughout all of our schools. So we are all using the same models and the same interventions and using the same best practices to meet the needs of our students. So it seems to be, you know, a next step. You know, we're moving in that direction. So
So is it something you wanna try to do for this budget that we're gonna vote on, or would
no, not
you be
necessarily,
happy
because
with?
I know that
Of course
we're
you would.
because we're gonna be. Of course, save me money.
Well, actually, I lied, you guys would triple.
Fine, it's fine. Whatever. We're all in there together, right? We all have to educate all of our kids. The kids in Townsend and Dover and Brookline mean just as much as the kids in Marlboro. Like, they all need a good education and need to have the same opportunities. I brought it up because I think I would like to keep that on our radar as we continue to have these conversations, as we look forward to next year to, building joint budgets and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a good thing to keep in our minds.
So why don't, Bill, can we do this? Can you put, and can we make sure it's in the minutes, Peter, that our organizational meeting, because usually we get organized pretty quick, can we maybe start having a discussion, add that to our thing, is looking at the cost of, how we do the cost of special ed?
Yes.
And that it's a little late in this budget season to do this, but definitely recognize that Marlboro has been bringing this up and has patiently awaited to see how Act 46 kind of sugared out.
Bill just gave us a great list. That's what I want us to identify first.
Yeah.
What are those things we absolutely need to be looking at as we assess?
And we're very fortunate that we actually have had a robust look at best practices and what we can be doing, so.
And also, we have that study too that we're gonna talk about at letter E.
Yeah.
Is that
That's
okay?
good. No, totally.
Does
Yeah,
any-
like I
is
said, I just
everybody
wanted to
good with
put it
that?
out
Thank
there.
you very much, that's awesome.
You know, it's
Everybody
always
good with
to be
that?
reminded.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Just for that, I need to.
Okay, then let's go to the grants budget. Yay, Lori.
Yes.
So,
So it's very early in the game. You should have a little packet for grants. Very early in the game to be putting together a grant budget, other than the offsetting salaries from the superintendent's budget, the special ed budget. There are offsetting salaries in the grants budget. But, in light of the fact of what's going on in the federal government, we aren't really 100% sure what we're going to get for allocations for fiscal year 19. So these are, my best estimates based on some history, and but it does give you at least a rundown of what grants we are utilizing right now federally, from the state, and then some of the other grants.
and so the overall is that your total expenses are down a little?
Yeah, this is just saying we're not going to spend
As much.
as much. Right.
So, any questions?
What does NS mean? Under federal grant?
National school.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's quite a big wonder.
This looks different than mine.
Yeah, and you'll see from 18 to 19, it's the
That's a
same,
lot of
because
milk.
we have no idea for 19, it's
Yeah.
dependent upon students eating lunch every day, so that's something that's
Right.
very hard to predict.
So, is there any questions on the grants budget? Oh, did you?
I was just
sorry.
curious, like, how much, has there been a lot of change in the numbers of free and reduced meals in schools over the last few years? Has it been on an uptick? Like, just wondering if that feeds into
Yeah,
it.
I think it's been fairly consistent, to be honest. I think that, there are schools that, see an increase one year and a decrease the next year, depending on sixth graders moving to the high school, that type of thing. So, but really across the the board, it's, you know, we're doing a good job at feeding the students, so quite a few of them getting free and reduced.
Is there a percentage across the SU that you know of?
I believe I think we're at like almost, we're not quite 50, we have, you know, there are some high.
On either side, yeah.
Yeah, there are some districts that have a high free and reduced, and then some that have lower. So I think it's not quite 50 because we
Yeah, well,
we
it's-
can't do the universal meals.
And it's not, you might have lower populations that have higher free and reduced lunch,
Right,
and you have
right.
higher populations that have lower
Right.
free and reduced lunch.
Is
so.
there reduced
Yes.
still?
Well, it's still covered 100%. But
Yeah.
Right, but it's,
it's still
You're still categorized
You're
as-
categorized.
but we cover it, so I think it's just really important that we
Mhm.
I was just curious. I didn't like this.
I think
heard it
somewhere you show the poverty levels. One of the reports has that, doesn't it? Is it in the special ed report?
No, we don't have them
I
there.
remember reading oh, you know what, I know where it was, forget it.
Yeah, it's not.
It was in those reports we did for Act 46, it had the poverty rates fall in different
Oh.
times.
Reviewing that today.
Yeah. Okay, is there any question on the grants? Money in, money out. Pretty easy. No, really. Now, we did have one lady at Dover Town meeting one time say, let's be serious, this is really our money, even if the federal government gives it to us, so let's not spend it. I know. Yes, okay, we'll just raise it ourselves. Okay, so the next one, letter D, agency fund budget. Now, remember, this is one we've always, back when I was chairman, before the other time Emily was chairman, we moved this out. We used to vote on it, but then we said, let's leave it so that if at town meeting, Townsend votes to cut Townsend school budget by a lot of money, then they can go back to the agency fund. And so it creates a little bit of issue, a little bit of work for Bill. But that's why we always meet right after town meeting so that we can approve this so Bill can get contracts out in time.
been doing this a long time.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of years, and this is one of the things that, you know, we talk about this, when I went to Brattleboro, before Act 46 was a law, when it was just some poor little bill numbered something or other. You know, there was people in Guilford that said, you can't share people like that, and I said, well, gosh, your business manager's the one that set it up when he was our business manager. So there's a lot of people that don't get this, and a lot of people that don't do this, and even when we went with Marlboro up to the state, the group before us was saying, yeah, we share some staff, but they're under individual contracts, you know, instead of being central office. So this is kind of, I don't think we're the only ones, but I don't think it's that common a thing. So this is just, if you want the services, you know, there they are for you. And if you don't want the services, you just have to let Bill know. But, and again, like I know several years ago, the band position, one of the schools reduced their number because a lot less students were doing instrumental music. And we all, the schools that were doing it agreed to pick up a little bit of an extra of a percentage just to make sure that we could keep the person full-time, because, you know, so there is some flexibility in this too. Lori, do you want to run through it, or is there?
You know, I think that I've been through it with most of the boards. I haven't been to Jamaica yet, but.
And they're not here, so they probably don't care.
So if there's, you know, any questions, then,
I guess they were happy with it.
no, Jamaica, I haven't been to Jamaica yet.
Oh, you
It's
just
next
haven't
week.
been there.
Is it next week? Or the
Otherwise
week
we'd
after?
be
The week
here.
after?
It is the week after, yes.
Yes.
Well, again, we don't vote on this till after, but it's just good to, if somebody knows, like, hey, all our students that are doing instrumental music aren't gonna do it next year, it's good to give central office a heads up.
Right.
Any comments, discussion on that?
Yeah, you should see these numbers in your local budget,
Yeah,
so
they're all built into.
they are built in now.
Okay,
Subject to
so we'll
change.
pass on that. So here's a conversation that I wanna have. It's now almost 7:45. We do have 2 other meetings scheduled if we need to. Not being able to look in my crystal ball a year and a half ahead, I can't even look into my crystal ball 2 weeks ahead and know what the weather's gonna be. They're predicting nasty 4-letter word in the next few days. So the executive committee bylaws allow us, under number 10, powers and duties, to to act on any other matter on behalf of the WCSU board in urgent or emergency situations when action is necessary for the best interest of the WCSU, and a quorum of the full WCS board cannot be gathered for a meeting. So we've now had 2 meetings to discuss budgets, and we've not been able to have a quorum. And last time we were much closer. Last time we were short one person. Al.
He wrote you in. He didn't show up.
But you're here now, Al, that's what
And
counts.
it doesn't even count now.
I know.
No, it counts. We're
So,
watching.
but no, it's good because that gave us an extra school. So, so I think we do have the ability, but as Emily kind of was saying earlier, maybe other people want to weigh in. I know it's gone to all the different schools, not to pick on the Dykes, but they come to every meeting anyways. Did you come for anything specific on the budget or just to see what?
Oh, just to observe.
Okay. Oops, I'm
Did you
sorry.
also read that? Because I
Well,
think
I'd
that's.
like to make a motion.
Well, we
that the
approve a draft
executive
budget.
Committee
No, it's not it.
act on voting to
Okay.
approve this budget.
Could you hold that for 1 second for me, sir?
No, I just
Okay.
laid it out already. It's out there.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'm lost. Which part of the agenda are we on here?
Back to A.
We're just on number 5, new business.
Ah.
Go ahead and make your motion that you just made.
I would like to make a motion that the executive committee acts on these budget proposals.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so he made the motion.
Was the
We have a
Budget
motion.
proposals?
Hang on.
I'm asking for clarity.
We have a motion and we have a second. Can you read the motion, please?
Mr. McFadden moved that the executive committee act on the budget proposals.
Okay. So that's multiple, so that's all the budgets that have action behind them. Is that correct? Was
That is
that your
correct.
intent? Was that the intent of your second?
Yes.
Okay. So are you okay with that?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just clarifying.
So then, Emily also just wanted me to make a point that approve a draft budget to be
Wait,
recommended to
back
the
up.
full WCSU board. Yeah,
Read
read what, I'm sorry.
the powers and duties. I just think it's really important that that the executive committee is delegated. We did this on purpose. The executive committee is delegated to, the first one on the bylaws for the executive committee are to approve a draft WCSU budget to be recommended to the full WCSU board. So Rich read a further item, which I think is really important, but I also think it's important that when we pass those bylaws, and I'm not suggesting that I wouldn't agree with this motion at all, but I just want to make sure we're really clear, when we pass these bylaws, it was that the executive committee would recommend a draft budget to the full WCSU board, and they would vote on it. That's what our bylaws say. It also says what you said later, that we can act as a, on behalf. And we did that on purpose too, because we were even then, back when we
Sometimes
passed these in
having trouble.
2013 or something, I think it was 2013. Yeah. In March of 2013, we were struggling with getting quorums, and we knew there were times when we might need to do that. But I just wanted to make sure everybody knew.
We still don't have enough. Unless Al splits himself.
And just one other thing,
Yep.
this is, I think, the first time that I remember us having had the Wyndham's, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember us having the Wyndham Central budget for the second time in front of our
Okay.
communities by the middle of November. This is early for us, and I applaud that, and thank you for that.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any other discussion?
So if we're making I just want to clarify, so if we approve to make this recommendation tonight.
No,
No,
if
that's
we
not it.
approve this, then we can vote, the executive committee can vote on the budgets. So this isn't approving the budgets, what it's doing is saying the executive committee's gonna approve the budgets, and then we will move on and approve the budgets. Or vote them down, it's whatever you decide.
But the first part of what you read said that it can make a recommendation to The
A
full
power
board.
of the executive committee is to recommend a budget to the full
full
board.
board.
We've discussed the superintendent's budget twice
Right.
as a
Right.
warned full board and haven't had it.
Right.
So then it does say that we can act on any matter in an urgent
other.
in an emergency or
Is this
situation
an
when
urgent
action
or
is
emergency
necessary.
action?
Well, I don't know if we would ever have a quorum down the road.
Oh,
Because
I
we have
agree
2
with
more
that.
meetings.
Yeah.
We do have an executive, we've had executive committee meetings where we haven't had enough members to vote as an executive committee, so, yep.
No, I
No.
mean, I just
No,
wanted to
Emily
clarify.
I
wanted
wanna,
to-
I wanna let
oh.
her finish.
Yeah, no, that's fine, I just
So-
needed to clarify, and I wanted
Yeah.
to, you know.
So, can I ask then about these other two meetings on here? Will we no longer hold those, or will we hold those?
I would see no reason to hold them
Okay,
if
that
we
was what I
have
was-
everything done that we need to have done.
I didn't know if there was
Yeah.
something else that was coming from this, you were.
No, I can't be there on the 29th.
So we're not having that meeting anyway, obviously.
I mean, can I just put in my 2 cents?
You can, yeah, you can, because you're gonna get the
If you
vote too,
don't-
and that's gonna
if
be
you
like
don't,
putting
that
in
would
a
be
dime.
inappropriate.
I mean, we all have our regular town meetings coming up anyway, you know, like, people can come to our Marlboro board meeting, you know, not next Thursday, the Thursday after. You know, people can, if they have questions, I think they're gonna come to the local board, then not necessarily come here. And in the 4 years I've been on the school board, I've never had anybody complain anything about the supervisory union budget. And I think that you guys have done an exemplary job this year of keeping it, you know, the increase is at like, what,
0.85.
yeah, less than 1%. I mean, I think, I feel pretty confident moving forward without upsetting our constituents.
If special ed costs stayed the same as they were last year, the grant money wasn't reduced, we'd actually be looking at a reduced total WCSU cost. So it's a no-brainer, why put it off?
This is not, this motion for clarity is not for us to change bylaws.
Right.
We'll still be doing it this way in the future. It's this year, under these circumstances, that we're suggesting we vote earlier than normal and without the executive
And-
committee.
Without the full board.
I mean, without the full board, only with the executive committee. I mean, it is a little unusual, and I would only say it, I agree with everything that everyone said, but I think it's really important that we are really open and transparent with our communities,
sure.
and we are going off of our normal schedule. I'm fine with us doing that, and I agree with what you said, I agree with what Ken said, but I would just caution us to be careful from our bylaws, and maybe we should actually revisit our bylaws to say, that the executive committee can have, you know, can make that decision. Maybe we should consider looking at them and making that change. I almost would feel better if it was like that.
I almost think that we approved the budget in the middle of November before
yeah, I
Thanksgiving
was
last year.
last year.
So we're about the
Was it?
same exact day, yeah. But
We had a full
board.
And we must have seen it twice by then, too.
We had, same exact
Lori, you're
thing.
just so far ahead.
Well, that's why I was grabbing that, because it was in there.
Look at that look.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lori did it all.
She did.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we have some discussion, we got 1 and then 2.
I wondered if there's a definition for emergency situation. I mean, I'm far from wanting to come back for extra meetings, but since this is the first meeting to make a decision on this budget, isn't it?
No, it's a second meeting, we
Second?
discussed it. We discussed the superintendent's 2 meetings, 2 weeks ago at that
Right.
meeting. The special ed budget kinda, I mean, if we vote it down, what happens? They're gonna spend the money anyways. And the grant budget is, it's money in, money out. Well, seriously, I mean, you can't change an IEP just because we voted down. So we could cut your budget in half. You're gonna spend what you need to spend because,
You could call this urgent. We can't get a quorum.
well, if we can't get a
Clarify the
quorum,
language,
which language?
there were
The second
two
page.
conditions.
Yeah, it just says, act on any other matter on behalf of WCSU board in urgent or emergency situations when action is necessary for the best interest of the WCSU and a quorum of the full WCSU board cannot be gathered for a meeting. So my concern is we've had 2 meetings where we haven't had a quorum,
Yeah.
and we may not have, you know, now on the 29th and the 6th, if we get snow and Wyndham Hill is bad, we may lose our
Us.
people from Wyndham, we may lose people from Marlboro, and then we may not even have an executive committee. You know, but again, in 2 weeks, we could have 60-degree weather and the sun will be shining till 9 o'clock at night. Who knows? Sir, are you all set on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I just wondered about what Emily said, that we need to be careful about, you know, what we represent to the public, and if the bylaws say it's an emergency situation, okay, if it's the second meeting, and I was here the last time, I didn't know that we could have possibly decided then I just wondered what emergency or urgent situation, how that was defined.
That we may not be able to get it because some
Yeah.
schools have to prepare a budget earlier because they have different
Well,
timelines.
Yeah,
which is
but
mainly
believe me, I'd rather
I have a
not come
question.
back.
Well, hang on, because I got,
That was my question too, to make sure that we are within the framework of
Yeah.
those rules. So the first motion would have to
Right, that's-
clear that we're in an emergency situation.
that's what he just did. That's the motion we have.
But, okay, well, what's the language of it though?
Just that we approve the,
But it doesn't reference.
can you please read the motion again? Everybody listen.
Let Google find it. Mr. McFadden moved that the executive committee act on the budget proposals.
And we have a second for that.
My point was, it doesn't reference the authority that we may or may not have under that section.
I don't know
this
if
is
we
an
have to,
emergency.
because this has already been voted on, approved, and been in place for a while. So then, and you'll have to decide when you vote, how you feel.
Well, can I make a attachment to my?
Can you amend your?
You can amend your motion.
Yeah,
Anybody can
right.
make it.
Amend it to say, act on it tonight. And if we have a full board at the next meeting, we can re-vote on it.
Well, we may
And
not
this
have
vote
next-
will be null and void.
Well, if we approve things
Because
tonight,
like
we
you were
won't-
saying, we don't know what the weather's
Okay,
gonna be.
hang on a sec. If we approve it tonight, we won't have to have any more meetings, so that will make that a moot point.
I think
Good
Mike's
point.
clarification
Bill
is
can't
just
be here.
wondering if we need to
All right, I'll
reference the
stick with the
bylaws
original because
in the
I think the
proposal.
weather's gonna get worse and we're gonna have less of a turnout.
I mean, it's a crapshoot, but go ahead.
I just think Mike's clarification was that he was wondering if the motion needed to reference the bylaws at all.
I don't think it has
I
to,
mean,
but.
in any other motion, we've never
I-
had to
you
reference
know,
the bylaws, so
You
I'm
can
not
ask
really
7
sure.
attorneys the same question and
Right.
get 12 different answers.
Well, you can ask this one, and I told you what I think my answer is.
I think that makes a great amendment.
But, you know, are you really practicing? And do you have your
I don't need to
malpractice
practice.
insurance? No, I mean, are you practicing for us now?
No,
Okay. So is that your advice as our attorney?
I'll just vote the way I wanna vote.
Okay. Go ahead.
I would just suggest that if we are going to move forward with doing this tonight, that we, at some point down the road, revisit the bylaws to see
Hey,
whether.
Bill, add, revisit the bylaws to your notes.
It doesn't need to be immediately, I
No,
just think that it's
we won't
important.
meet again till next
No,
year.
no, I mean,
so-
it doesn't even need to be next spring, I'm just saying, I think that it's.
I think we're gonna have to revisit them when we have our new school districts.
I have to
Oh,
go.
Why?
to-
We're still in SU.
Because I think they may change some things, we may have an easier time getting super board, or the super board
Can
together.
I just
so-
clarify my reason for saying
Yeah.
it?
You can do anything you
I'm,
want.
sort of goes along with what you just said. I think maybe our challenges around being able to achieve a quorum have made it necessary for us to revisit this because whether some people might interpret this as urgent and others might not, I think as a board, we need to make that clear. And maybe it's time to relook at our bylaws and meet the needs.
You gotta introduce yourself if you wanna speak.
I show Donald Brookline.
Even later than me.
Go ahead.
Cat's gonna be really happy. He called and said, "You gotta get down here." I have to agree with Emily. If there's any question at all, and if somebody had marked their calendars like me, who's like, "Oh, this is the budget meeting time," a little later, I would say that we should probably wait. I know everybody here's be really happy I said this. Wait till it's exactly that time. Give everyone the opportunity.
What time?
Like usually we're at the end of the month.
Not really great.
And you
No,
write
actually,
it.
we're-
I thought we were late.
It was November 14th of last year that we voted on this.
16.
So-
Okay,
16,
16, okay.
Sorry, 16.
For some reason I had it down as the last Wednesday.
So basically it's similar to.
No, we had
Yeah,
meetings set up for the
similar
last we set up all the same meeting dates, but not every time do we have to use them.
Yes.
So, okay, I haven't really heard any new discussion, so you call the question, well, we have to vote if we call the question. Okay, all those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, question's called, we definitely got 2/3 majority. All those in favor of the motion, please read the motion one last time, Peter.
Mr. McFadden moved that the executive committee act on the budget proposals.
That's your question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Did I have a nay down here?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so I see 2 nays, so I would say the motion carries. Hearing no objections, the motion carries. With the motion carrying, would anybody like to make another motion?
Ken? Since you made
Do we have to
the
do them individually?
I'd say let's do them individually,
motion.
just,
Yes, we always do.
Okay.
because you'll have to read the number
It's just the
too,
two
Ken.
that say action.
Right. 3,
Just A and B.
Three that say action.
A, B, C.
Thanks for causing me pain.
A, B, C.
Say, you want me to make the motions for you?
You don't need
Sure, go ahead, Joe.
Let's see.
You don't really approve the grants, that's not really.
You've already approved for me to
Right.
sign for the grant.
Okay, so just A and B. So who would like to make a motion?
I'll make the motions for
Okay,
Ken.
the chair recognizes the gentleman from Leland and Gray, Townsend.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's budget in the amount of, which number am I reading?
886.
886-203.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Selena?
Selena.
Okay.
Seconds.
The chair recognizes the girl from Marlboro.
I'm a girl?
The lady from Marlboro, I'm sorry.
Gosh.
I was trying to make her not sound old.
Run, bitch.
Okay, is there any discussion?
You're forgiven.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Cool. That motion passes. Congratulations, Bill. You'll have a paycheck next year, starting July 1st.
He doesn't care about that.
I'll make another motion to approve the special education budget in the amount of $4,944,327.
Anybody like to?
I will second it.
Okay,
Give me the number again, please.
4944327.
So-
4944327.
Joe made the motion, Ken seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Grants, we were told we don't have to do anything with. Agency fund, we just discussed. We are up to integrated field review update, Mr. Antone.
Yes, so I wanted to update the board. Our integrated field review happened on October 24th. I was contacted by the Agency of Education. The final report will be prepared and ready to go by the end of this month. They will be presenting the report. It usually takes about 20 to 30 minutes. At one of our leadership team meetings, more than likely in January. And so I wanted to let the board know that that would be occurring. Once that is finalized, I will be sending out an invitation to all board members, letting you know exactly what time that will be. It'll be during the day, so that if anybody would like to attend and hear the presentation of the report, you are all welcome. I will, after that presentation of the report, I will have a copy of the report. I will include that in the next superintendent cabinet report and a little, debrief on what was shared with us through the agency above and beyond the report. So I just wanted to alert everybody that more than likely you'll receive some communication from me in early December, letting you know when that date is. And if you can make it, you're more than welcome. And if you can't make it, you will still get a full copy of it, plus a analysis from the leadership team about that.
So should warn that meeting as a super board meeting.
I will do that. Thank you.
So just in case a lot of people show up, more than came tonight.
Did you get any?
He's gonna let us know. It's
Initial-
sometime in
No
January.
hints
No,
or
nothing?
nothing. They don't like to do that. They like to come
Yeah.
and boom.
That's actually part of the process.
Yes.
I know, but it's nice to get a little nugget.
No nuggets.
No nuggets.
I got no nuggets.
Here, I'll give you his book if you wanna read his book though. His book's got a lot of nuggets in it, and I bet you if you look at his book, you're gonna have
I'm
some
good.
ideas what he's gonna say.
Thanks. Give a minute.
Okay,
Old
I have,
business.
no more new business, old business, we have facilities grounds transportation position discussion. So last meeting, Mr. Antone handed out a director of facilities transportation security. From that, we determined that Wyndham was not interested, and I don't remember Marlboro's response. I don't know if they were interested or not, but I know that the West River group had discussed it, Joe, and you made some comments. We did talk about it a little bit at the River Valleys group, and we really didn't make a decision. But one of the things I suggested to Bill is if, Mr. Antone, is if he wanted to, we could also see it doing about an agency fee item for that. If the individual schools wanted to participate in it, to take some burden off of their principals. I know Wardsboro, you guys had a water issue, as did we also in Dover, that required a sap tank to supply water to the school for a while, and pipes run on the ground, and it was a real horror show. I think yours was resolved in like a week, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
You guys went pretty quick, but both the administrators, because at a River Valleys meeting, their new principal and our second-year principal are like, I didn't go to school to learn how to do a water system. I have no clue what they're talking about,
I
and,
don't want them to.
you're right, and it was a real mess. So, Bill?
Well, actually, you, at your last meeting, you also created a subcommittee.
Yes, ma'am.
And Selena Romo is the chair of that subcommittee.
The only member.
So I would defer to Miss Romo at this time.
She's like, about what?
No. I haven't, I mean, have done some things. I did reach out to, a gentleman named Alden Harwood, who has this same job in Addison North, just to get a copy of his job description and get some, talk to him a little bit about the, what he sees in his work. I got a very brief response from him.
I'm too busy.
You need someone with a wide array of knowledge and expertise, must be able to operate on the same level as special education directors, IT directors, etc. Because the amount of knowledge you need to have is very wide. From
Asbestos to water
Yeah,
systems
yeah.
to building construction and.
Yeah, no,
Not
it's a
just
big.
facilities.
Yeah, it's with transportation, security. I mean, there's so much, even just within the subcategory of a facility. And we have 11 buildings, right? Or is
We
it?
have 11 districts.
Oh,
Not 11 buildings,
okay.
but we do have
10 buildings?
eight. I
Eight,
thought.
no,
Eight
8 buildings. Okay,
Do I
That's a
hear
lot of
seven?
buildings.
Do I hear seven?
I know. So, but he did send me his job description, which is, what we have here is way more detailed. So I think we're off to a good start. I did a little bit of tweaking of wording and trying to consolidate some of the job description a little bit just on my own to make it a little less cumbersome than a 4-page document. And I sent it to a few people and I got no response.
You didn't send it to
Thumbs
me,
up.
did you?
I couldn't add
No.
to it. You'd done a perfect job.
Oh.
Yeah, really.
There were people.
I did actually beat
Can't
it.
improve on
I
perfection.
have a copy with
Do you
me.
bleep that out, or does that get to go out?
It was just a sneeze, wasn't it?
This is total
Bless
sneeze, I'm
you.
sorry. Allergies.
I want
So-
some of what you're drinking.
Just water, sorry.
From Marlboro?
Yeah, it's Marlboro water.
There you go.
I wanna move.
You want to move. So, and that's kind of where I'm at, is just trying to like bring this in a little bit so that way it's a little bit more detailed. And I don't know, I guess I'm at a loss as to what the
So,
next,
can I make
move
a
is,
suggestion
yeah.
for this? So why don't we ask our business manager and superintendent to kind of put together what they think a salary for this position? I know you had some numbers, but let's check
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and see.
I mean, I
Let-
asked Bill for, sorry to interrupt
Okay.
you, Rich.
No, go ahead.
I did ask Bill for some information, and he just got it to me yesterday because we were in the midst of trying to finish this. I was trying to figure out what it was each individual school currently spent on facilities type stuff to try to get some ideas about how, what the costs are per school and then what it could look like if we average it out and try to build it in by AD. So I was trying to raffle, that was my intention, but I haven't gotten that far yet.
So where I was going was I think, because pretty soon this SU's gonna put their budgets to bed within a month and a half. And maybe they could spend a little time and go to the individual boards before our reorganizational meeting and talk to the individual boards and say, this is kind of what we came up with, this is kind of what the cost would be and this is where you may be able to save some money. So although our budgets would have been voted on, everybody would have an idea. And if they wanted to, you know, basically we vote, as a school, we get a bottom line voted to us. Voters can't change line items, they can't demand line items be increased or cut. So the board can say, hey, we have $100,000 in janitorial services. If we do this facilities person, we can save $30,000, but it's gonna cost us $28,000. The board can make that decision, and when we vote the agency fund, we could actually add that for those boards that wanted to, if it was gonna work, and then if not, we just have the stuff to grow on, and we can work on it. The two new districts can work on it with what, you know, if you folks don't want it at all, or if Marlboro doesn't want it or wants it, then, you know, we can play that into, and then when we create a budget next year. Does that work for people? Yes?
I don't know who to ask this, but probably you.
I
Have
don't know.
you checked in with Visbit on this?
No.
For resource,
I
because
sent him an email.
Yeah,
Visbit
so I
has
think that was-
resources for this, and I think we could get an awful lot of information from Visbit about this. I mean,
I also sent something VSBA.
I almost feel like there's some kind of grant, I can't remember what it is, but there's something, they're really trying to promote this, this type of a position, because it works, it's great for risk management, obviously.
Right,
Did you
I
ever-
don't think there's a grant that
No.
would go towards the salary and benefits of
I
somebody.
guess I wasn't thinking about that as
Yeah.
far as toward the salary, but some, maybe, I don't know.
Some sort
I'm
of
just
consultation to build
remembering
it.
something about it, and I think we should contact them.
They certainly have a lot of training for this type of position, so,
I think they've been encouraging
yeah,
this kind of
they
position as a risk management.
has come through my
Yeah, no, and they do have annual grants that this type of position could
managing.
manage
Reach out
and,
for.
yeah.
Apply. Thank you.
Alright, I'll reach back out to Visbit and
Yeah,
VSBA
we should.
and just see why they're not responding to you.
Let me do that for you, since I sent one, I'll follow up.
Do you wanna follow up?
Yeah.
Do you need,
I sent it to info at,
I'll give you.
okay, you give me a name?
Will you CC me in those emails, just so that they can
Yeah.
go?
Okay, so is any other comments on a facilities person?
So,
That's handy.
yes.
Go ahead, I guess.
Just doing a quick
We're having a
analysis
sidebar.
with Stephanie's input, we believe that we can probably pay for 20% of the position out of special ed because of that transportation issue. So just so you have that information, Selena.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Right, so in the agency fund, it would look more like an 80% position. And then the other would be added to special ed, and we would get reimbursement on it. And I have checked that out with the AOE, and that is a,
So let me ask you this current problem you're having with the transportation stuff, would a position like this help? Well,
I mean, I'm trying to manage it, and Stephanie's trying to manage it, so it's really taking three of us to
Yeah.
try to manage this problem right now.
Plus Ally.
Well, three of us meaning Ally,
Oh, okay,
and you and I, and actually Lori
Yeah.
inputs on it too, so it's, yes.
It's at least 10 to 12 hours a week that we're dealing with either timesheets related or coordination issues or trying to figure out who's where, what the cost is, what's going on with insurance, calling Visbit. It's a lot
It's a lot
of time.
Yeah.
And those are the things that, you know, if you see the lights on at central office at 9:30 usually, that's what we're working on, are those issues.
Yeah.
So,
I thought you just forgot to turn the light off.
no, we are very good about that. We all have OCD.
so Emily,
The transportation issue, this is one of the reasons why I support this, having a position like this. I know the after-school programming is struggling with the transportation. And I don't know if every one of our schools have after-school, but an awful lot of our schools have after-school and summer learning. I should call that expanded learning opportunities. And one of the ways to make these programs equitable across our district is to provide transportation, and the challenges right now are really great to be able to provide transportation. If we have a different, if we have a position that's dedicated to working on this and the other items here, we may be able to find a way, not just in our SU, but to reach out. One of the conversations we're having on the advisory board for expanded learning is should we be reaching out to a place like Grace Cottage Hospital and Valley Cares, because they need transportation too? Is there a way we can reach out to our select boards or the state about what, we don't have time to do that kind of important research that we need to do and find out who else is having that kind of a problem. So I think we should really be serious about this. May save us money.
Okay, any other comments on the facilities transportation? Thank you, committee of one.
She has a,
Did anybody else volunteer
you're
to help?
sending it to people, so.
I sent it to these two.
So they're on the committee with her.
Oh, well,
In
well,
all
thank you,
fairness,
committee
I
of three.
volunteered Al.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so they, it is.
What
a
happens when you
committee
don't
of
show
Oh.
up?
Committee of three.
Okay,
Even
committee
though
of
you were
three.
on the.
And Drew, I volunteered
Drew, I
him
think
too.
Drew's on.
He ran the other way.
I noticed he's not here tonight,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he probably got scared.
We're the West River.
That would be the eighth
Buildings
committee I'm on.
So-
Yes.
So could I just understand
Makes
the
sense.
will of the board is to empower the Facilities and Grounds and Transportation Subcommittee to come, to spend the next 4 months really fleshing this out so that at your reorganization meeting, you have some really concrete
I even
things?
think you should do it earlier so that you can sell it to individual boards.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, if you could do it before budget, people could, amend their budget at town meeting.
Okay.
Be the last time for a lot of the
If.
boards, if they wanted to. Yeah.
If they can do it.
Right. Well, yeah. How many vote by Australian ballot?
This was his.
No, I have
Besides,
one.
Newbrook
I forgot
votes?
my office.
No, we don't, that's right, we don't anymore.
Okay. So, the additional thing was, I guess just today, this came out today or yesterday?
Well, it came out, it was distributed today.
Today. So Philip B. Scott wrote a letter to school boards, education leaders. And so it's 6 pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
5
pages.
pages.
Basically, he,
I have copies for everybody?
I passed them out.
We all
So he is just talking about opportunities and his 631. He spoke about 631 when he was down in the valley a few months ago when he organized River Valleys. And I guess I did not see this until I saw a draft of this. I saw something about this yesterday, but I didn't read
I
it.
didn't see it. VSBA
Okay.
sent it to everybody
Everybody.
today.
Today, early or late?
Midday.
Anyways, I'm sorry. So I've never I thought I saw it. I'm not sure. I know I saw the 631.
That has been out, that's
for a
been
while.
out
Okay.
since he started doing that one right after.
Okay.
He spoke about 631 at your reorg,
Well,
at your
that's what I was
org.
gonna say. Right.
Yeah, he did, but that's
Okay.
not, that's just referenced in here.
Okay. So, anyways, just for some guidance and some thoughts as you work on your budgets. I don't know if anybody wants to take a couple minutes and read it and have a discussion about it. You can discuss it at your own boards. Just be aware it's out there. I know that Secretary Holcomb at Marlboro, when we went up with Marlboro, she kept talking about $100 million shortfall. And
80.
80
It was
million.
80.
And what's it at now? Didn't it come down a little?
45.
It's now at 45?
Well, there's one in the education fund. Emily?
Sorry.
One in the ed fund and one in the
Yes.
general fund?
Yes,
So
So
the two of them together?
45 in the general fund, I believe.
yeah, I
Okay.
believe that's right.
So, I mean, it's gonna be, there was, at the West River training they did, one of the slides that the lady used was from the reformer that said there's an 8-cent increase for everybody in property taxes just because,
That's the 80 million.
okay, everybody used their surpluses up last year and the state
was
used some
gonna-
one-time,
Well, everybody
One.
didn't, but
well, a lot of people used up their surpluses. So, who knows, it's gonna always be interesting, and I think, January 1st, when everybody goes back to most peculiar, including the people on both sides of me, they're gonna have a lot of fun.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And be aware, make sure you keep in contact with your legislators.
I hope the most important work is on that number 6.
Which is, 6 fewer workers. Well, I tell you what,
Lost jobs
at the end of the
every day.
month, I'm gonna be one of the less fewer workers.
You retiring?
Yes.
He's not stopping working, though.
Well, I did hear a number that
Believe it when I
the,
see it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how
retired
accurate
generation
that
is
is.
gonna increase by, what, 50%? Or double within
There's
the
been some question about how.
retired
accurate
folks.
How accurate the numbers are. So anyways, is there any comments, any thoughts, anybody?
But
We just wanna get out.
I'll just say, and I can't find it in here, Carol and I were just talking about it, I can't find it right in here off the top of my head, but it does mention in here somewhere about suggesting that those school districts that are small keep their increases low, and those school districts who are increasing enrollment should
Oh,
be
it's the
able to.
third paragraph on the
Thank you.
fourth page.
You want it on the fourth page?
He says, I acknowledge that one size does not fit all, but if your student count is declining, districts should do everything,
Yeah,
italicized,
that's it.
possible, including consolidation of grades, schools, or other innovations to lower pupil expenditures. Alternatively, if student count is increasing, you should not allow per pupil spending to increase more than the growth rate calculation I will apply to state spending.
So we all know that if your student count is declining, that is, as we know it very, very well at Leland and Gray, that is why our budgets go up. So I'm not sure what he's trying to get at here, but it's kind of, he needs to look at our ed funding formula before he makes suggestions like that, because
Yeah.
that's kind of not how the ed funding formula works. We have a statewide ed funding formula, and I think it's really important. I don't know if you want to say anything, Carolyn, but
Nope.
it was a little
You
disappointing.
said it all before.
She's ready.
I wish that folks in these positions would understand a little bit more about education funding and actually putting together a school budget.
Yes, exactly.
So one thing that still really bothers me a lot is, and was part of the stuff that lady showed for the West River group, is, if there really is such a cost savings and consolidation and bigger numbers, then how come the bigger schools, the right-sized districts, aren't half the spending of all the other schools?
Yep.
And they say, oh, well, we have more needs too. Well, so does all the little schools have needs.
Yeah.
And, and again, Vermont is not this flat thing that lays out here where the line from Wyndham to Dover is, it's 11 miles, as a crow flies, but yet, sometimes it can take you can't get to Marlboro from Dover unless you know the back roads and there's not enough snow that it isn't plowed and, it isn't snowed in. So, well, I think we've all said it. So instead of beating it up, I would say that we had 2 meetings scheduled, November 29th and December 6th. Does anybody really want to meet because we've approved budgets?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Wait, you have to,
I have to what?
before,
Oh,
I don't know if that matters.
don't, nobody listen to Ken for a second.
Oh, just a second?
I know
Just
he
one
wanted
second.
to mention
No,
something.
so November 29th, the last Wednesday of the month, Al, Emily, myself, and Bill are going up north to see Secretary Holcomb about the issue that we discussed with the Southern Study Governance, the French report, aka French report. So we'll have a report for you folks. We'll write something up since we don't meet again really till March. But if anybody has any questions or anything you want us to ask, make sure you email myself, Emily, or Al, and we'll make sure it gets asked in the form that you put it in.
You already have notes on that, right?
Yeah, we have notes from the last meeting. He does really good minutes.
Awesome.
Except he told Al that he was here at the last meeting, but again, that was my
No,
fault.
that was
He
really.
was here in spirit though, right?
Yeah, he was.
I was.
I wrote him down in
I was
spirit.
thinking about it.
Phantom quorum.
Do we need to make a motion to remove those last 2 meetings?
No.
No,
No.
they're just removed?
Just have to-
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all done. We
Just
just
checking.
saved a couple meetings.
Just checking.
Okay, so
Thrilled.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Carolyn,
Second.
we're all done.
Giving me back my ruler.
Hey Carolyn, it's not even 8:30 yet. You're gonna
I
get
am
home
proud
and you're
of
not
you.
gonna know what to do.
I am thrilled. Before 8:30. I was
Anything you
aiming
want
for
recycled?